Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cooking with Big Mark.
Yes, we've had a little hiatus here, but we're now back. And where I last left you was talking about eggs and how they're sort of making a comeback now. People now say that people eat about 300 eggs a year, a person. And they view the cholesterol now, as I mentioned before, as not being as bad cholesterol. So they're sort of making a comeback. So we're going to talk about four of, I think, the most normal egg dishes, which would be omelet, frittata, quiche, and stratas. And they're all, based on the same type of thing. But the egg is so versatile. And when we were talking about before about leftovers, the other things like quiche and stratas and the frittatas are great for anything you have left in the refrigerator. To add in, you get a very quick meal. So the omelet itself, if you're a real omelet aficionado, you want to have a pan that is really used for nothing else but omelets. It should usually be a non-stick pan, and you're not supposed to ever wash it with soap or anything. You can wipe it out, but you want to get like what they call seasoned. And generally, I use, most of the times I do it, it's a little, probably 6-inch little non-stick pan, and I usually use 3 eggs, and I always put like a tablespoon of water. I don't know why. I must have read that somewhere or something, but I add that to it. You just sort of mix it enough so that the eggs and the white and the yolk come together. You don't want to beat it like we will do, later on with the quiche, frittatas, and stratas. This you just so it's mixed, and it keeps that little gelatinous aspect of it, because that's what helps with the omelet. Then you put a little butter in your pan, and you just put it in there, and when the pan is warm, and you let it sit and just go for a little bit, and then you start to pull from the sides toward the middle. And what happens is what's in the middle spills over into the area that you've just sort of cleared, and that's how you develop your base. And once you get most of the wet stuff in the middle out of the edges to become part of the whole omelet, that's when you can add your, whatever it is you're going to do, greens or asparagus or meats or cheeses or anything else that you want to contain in it. And then you sort of tilt the pan, flip it over one side, then flip over the other, and boom, out on your plate. That's it. It's very simple. It's a 3 or 4 minute deal, if done properly.
Is there a distinction between the French style of omelet and the American?
I don't think really, Mark. There is no. I mean, they're all the same. I mean, it's Spanish they do all kinds of things with eggs that are like an omelet type of thing. But no, I mean, it's the same basic. The only difference would be what you put in it, probably. But I don't think there's I've never known any distinct difference other than that's really what it comes down to, what's in it. The French use a lot more herbs and things than I think than we do here.
True.
But I think otherwise, just an omelet's an omelet. So then we get into the quiche and frittata. Now the quiche, of course, is sort of like a custody type dish, as is the frittata, and usually it's made with 6 to 8 eggs or something. You add milk or cream or both to it, and you beat that up so that it's well mixed. And the quiche is served, which is of French origin, that is served in a pie crust. And what you do is just cut your crust, and if you usually want to bake that crust off a little bit beforehand, so that it gets a little tight, so it doesn't get too soggy when you cook it. Then you just mix whatever you're going to put in your eggs. The difference from the omelet is the omelet you add the things at the end. With the quiche, you just put them in to start with. Whether it's greens or bacon or cheese, and the most famous one probably is bacon and cheese, or ham and cheese. The famous quiche Lorraine from the Lorraine section of France. Quiche Lorraine, Alsace Lorraine rather. Quiche Lorraine from Alsace Lorraine. Then, so if anything goes in, it'll then go into the oven and bake, and for 30, 35 or 40 minutes until the center has just a little jiggle to it. And that's really all you want, and makes a nice brunch dish or breakfast or whatever. Now, the frittata, someone online is a really, I guess, of Italian origin, And I suppose Italians at some point said, why the hell are we going to be going through the trouble of making a crust? Why don't we just throw it in the pan and cook it? And I'd be willing to bet it was more Spanish origin than it was Italian, to be honest with you. They do a lot more of eggs. And part of their tapas is almost that famous egg and potato torte type of thing, which is really the same as a frittata, the same basic. The only other difference with the frittata is, again, using all leftovers anyway, the shape or form combinations of cheeses, but that is started on the top of the stove in a pan, and normally in a non-stick pan, and generally it calls for 6 to 8 eggs, and then any combination of milk and cream, so it just it has sort of like a loose, not too tight, but so it's like a batter type of thing. Then you just pour it into the pan with whatever you're going to add to it: greens, herbs, meats, sausage, whatever. And you cook it on top of the stove for probably maybe 5 or 10 minutes until you start seeing around the edges starts to brown a little bit. You don't move it now, just leave it alone. And then there's really 2 methods. If you let it go pretty long on the top of the stove, it'll congeal enough that you can, what most people do is to flip it over by putting a plate on it, flipping it over onto the plate, and then slide it back into the pan again. But for the most part, and the way I do is to put it on the second part, once you get the edges done, is to throw it in the oven and finish it off in the oven. And that's an easy way of doing it. And again, it's a great dish. It's great for eating cold as well as hot or warm. That was great for picnics and things. But again, it depends. It's like, flavor in, flavor out, or, whatever you put into it, the ingredients are going to make it. Now, the strata, which is a 4th one, which is kind of a very different, it's really like a savory bread pudding. And, but it's a great dish for a brunch and for other dishes, or even as a main course for those who don't eat a lot of breakfast. Every once in a while, you like to have egg combinations at night. And the beauty of this strata is it's all made the night before, because a good part of the preparation means sitting in the refrigerator for 6 to 24 hours, so the bread absorbs all the liquid. Now, again, the basic custody group, again, is your 6 to 8 eggs, cream, and milk, combination. And all of these, even on doing the quiche and the chowder, I always also use a little bit of dry mustard, so it gives a little tang to it. But in the strata, definitely a little dry mustard added into it, and other flavors that you want. But you basically tear up a loaf of French bread. You don't have to cube it; you just pull it apart. You'll need about 6 cups or so, and you put it into a pan. And then you make your mixture and whatever you're going to have. Obviously, you have to pre-cook bacon or sausage or other meats you're going to add. You buy ham. It generally calls for two kinds of cheese. Generally, something like an Emmentaler or a Swiss, and a cheddar or Monterey Jack type of thing. So you get sort of a runny and a flavorful cheese. And salt, pepper, again, herbs, and you just pour it all over the bread and mix it all in. A lot of people also will put in onions and scallions and other flavor things. People put even tomatoes in, cherry tomatoes. It's really anything that you want to have. But the main thing is the bread will then soak up all that custard overnight, and it becomes very moist. And so the next day you throw it in your oven for 35 to 40 minutes. And when it looks like it's again in the center has a little bit of a kick to it, I mean, not moving, so it's done. And you can do that in a square pan or a round pan, any kind of pan you want. But it makes a great combination of eggs, cheese, butter, meat, and those are great combinations that people like. So the great eggs, you can so much versatility you can do with it. And these are all, I think, probably the main types of dishes that really people get the most pleasure out of. So not to egg you on, but try doing it.
All right, thank you. There was a slight miscommunication last week about what the topic would be, so I focused on eggs in the last episode, so that has already been focused upon. So today I'm going to talk about something completely different, The only possible link being that in Jamaica, Campari is labeled as containing eggs because eggs are used to fine it. And that's apparently because there are so many vegans in Jamaica who are Rastafarians, which I thought was very interesting. But that's the only link to eggs and Campari, which is today's topic. Campari first started being made in 1860. It's a bitter liqueur. It's an Amaro, and really is a star of a lot of classic cocktails. And I just kind of wanted to focus on that and kind of its development over time as an ingredient, and the sort of evolution of the Americano, which was Campari, sweet vermouth, and club soda, which upon request of the Count Campari himself had gin added to it at a bar, and thus the Negroni named after him was born. And those are equal parts of your gin, your sweet vermouth, and your Campari. The Boulevardier is essentially a Negroni with bourbon, but he will also do it with rye. And there's also the Old Pal, and that is specifically made with rye, Campari, and dry vermouth, as opposed to sweet vermouth. Some other fun Campari cocktails, of course, the spritzes can be used in place of Aperol. You want to use less because it doesn't have that sweet note that Aperol has, but it does make a great spritz. You can do a white wine spritz with the Campari white wine and club soda, harking back to its origins. There's, of course, the Negroni Sbagliato, which is going to be your Campari sweet vermouth and sparkling wine. So it kind of goes full circle on that one. It's vermouth, Campari, and a sparkling element. Some other great Campari cocktails include the Sorrentino, which is made with Barolo Chinato, which is a Barolo wine that's been infused with quinine. Kind of a weird thing. It's a little bit hard to find, but fun. And soda water and Campari, of course. The Jungle Bird is another classic cocktail that uses Campari. And this is one of the few rum-based cocktails, and that's made with dark rum, pineapple juice, lime, and simple syrup. So that is a little glimpse into the world of Campari. One other interesting thing to note is until 2006, it was made with the red dye made from insects from South America. And that has been mostly discontinued. It's most places, if you look at the back of a bottle, it's a combination of flavorings, usually synthesized flavorings, but bottles have been found in Sweden and Mexico up to this day that are still made in the traditional method with the insects, and nothing says delicious like insects. So anyway, this has been Cooking with Big Mark.
Could you talk about the fining in Campari? They used to, in winemaking, they used to do fining too. I've never heard in the old days. I have not heard much about it lately. Is that a process that is no longer?
No, it's still something that happens, because basically egg white is one of the best ways to get fine particulate out. And if you're talking about something that is, kind of a witch's brew, the way that Campari, any of those Benedictine, any of those things that have a lot of drambuie, a lot of spices in them, and herbs and spices, definitely you're going to have some leftovers, and that's what you'd be taking out by fining.
But wines were fined as well.
Oh yeah, it still goes on.
Okay.
Yeah, and most wines and liquors are not essentially vegan for that reason. But of course, it depends on the producer and the region and all those other elements that go into these things.
That's a term, finding the wine. I used to read that a lot, and I was just thinking, when you mentioned, I haven't heard that term used at all lately, so I didn't know whether the process had changed or whether they.
Yeah, it's not always eggs. There's other ways you can do it, but yeah, finding is still a thing.
Okay, very good.
All right, so this has been Cooking with Big Mark. Thank you for joining us.